Welcome. It's Friday night, and today is episode 3 of Caviar and Cadavers. As always, we are your gracious hosts, Katie.
And I'm Krissie.
And welcome.
Welcome back, because we were on a little bit of a hiatus.
Yep, if you can tell, Krissie is no longer pregnant.
I'm not pregnant anymore.
We have our beautiful little
Cheers to that.
Cheers to that.
Friday night, let's get started.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so this lost our train of thought. So Ruby Catherine has arrived.
She has.
She is a precious little bean, and thank you, Kevin, for watching her tonight so that Mom can film this
tonight. Yeah, so I'm going to enjoy it.
That's it.
And drink up.
That's right. So today, what we have on the docket is an episode that's loosely based around bakeries. So when we were coming up with this episode, we thought about, when we were young, we had a bakery, and you always had those really nice mixed cookie platters. And when your little prize jewel of the platter are like the 3 or 4 rainbow cookies that you see, they're just so brightly colored. They're covered in chocolate, so they stand out kind of amongst the mass of just, white cookies. And they're delicious.
Yes.
They're delicious. So yeah, we're gonna make some of those. And just a brief history on that. I mean, they are an Italian-American treasure. They were brought over by immigrants. There's actually no history of these cookies, these exact cookies from Italy. But Northern Italy does have a history with almond-flavored desserts. So,
And I'm also wondering too, is it the colors of the cookie supposed to be the Italian flag?
It's the Italian flag. It is the Italian flag. But nowadays, and this isn't really recent, but if you look at a lot of like grocery store bakeries, a lot of Jewish bakeries, Eastern European bakeries, a lot of people have really owned these cookies. So if you do want to make a kosher swap, you would just switch out any of the dairy for margarine, a lot of flour you could use, matzah cake meal, things like that.
So you can make substitutions.
Yes, you certainly can. And you obviously can change the color too, which is completely artificial.
Yeah.
So, go for it. But to go back to our crime scene now, so we're gonna talk about a cold case, a 30-year-old cold case that was solved by a woman who was a delivery truck worker for a bakery outlet.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a little bit about what happened. But before we start, let's jump into how we put together our rainbow cookie, because this thing is gonna take a long, long time to chill in the refrigerator. So let's get started with that, and then we'll come back and talk about our story. Okay, so to prep your ingredients, you're gonna wanna start with your apricot preserves. Now, you wanna boil this on the stove top just so it gets pretty loose and liquidy so you can push it through a sieve. So this definitely takes a little while. You're gonna need some patience, but it's definitely worth it. You wanna get all of those really large fruity chunks out and just be left with that really nice, gummy, just jelly apricot jam. So set that aside. So now let's keep on prepping our meal. We're gonna separate 4 egg yolks from their whites. Be careful, I definitely dropped some shell in there. So let this go with your whisk attachment, and you're gonna want it to just get to stiff peaks before you're adding in 1/4 of a cup of sugar. So here what I'm gonna do is just prep some of my other ingredients. Get my flour ready, get my almond paste out of their boxes. And this is actually looking pretty good. So let's stop this now. We're gonna add in that 1/4 of a cup of sugar. And here you're gonna want very glossy, stiff peaks. Looks great. So let's set that aside in a separate bowl. Perfect. All right, and with some video editing magic, we have a clean bowl again, and add your paddle attachment. So at this point, you're gonna wanna add your almond paste and 3/4 of a cup of sugar. Now it's a pretty stiff paste, so it's gonna take a little while for everything to combine. But as you can see, it's getting smaller, it's looking good. We'll stop it here, and we're gonna add 2½ sticks of butter. Now the key here is you're gonna wanna whip this until it gets very light and fluffy, and you can see that the color is actually even changing. So that's a good sign that you're ready for your next few ingredients. So we're adding in our almond extract and our 4 egg yolks. Well, that's pretty good. So So we'll slow down the paddle attachment and we'll add our salt and our flour. And the key here is just to mix it because you don't want to over mix or else you'll have a pretty tough dough. So like I said, the almond paste is pretty stiff. So this is kind of challenging. You're gonna wanna fold in your egg whites without completely deflating all of the air you just created. Now, this is an arm workout. It's tough to be gentle. I actually snapped my spatula, so beware. So here you're gonna now separate out your batter into 3 different bowls. And the key for rainbow cookies is that they look like an Italian flag. So get your red and your green food dye ready because you are definitely gonna need way more food dye than that. So I was putting in upwards of 20 drops in each bowl to really get that bold red and green color. And make sure you really mix this well because if you have any streaks in your batter, it just doesn't look as nice. So set aside 2 of your bowls. And now what I like to do is I have a prepared baking sheet and there are precise measurements, but what I like to do is just make it into the best rectangle that you can. You have to be fairly consistent with your other layers because you are going to stack these things. But your goal here is get the batter to be about 1/4 of an inch thick. Now put that in an oven, 350 for 8 to 10 minutes. And in general, you're gonna wanna barely undercook these. Just cook them. You don't wanna overcook these. They're very thin and it might seem like they're not cooked, but believe me, trust your gut, it's cooked. Take it out of the oven. So do the same thing with the white and the green layers. And when each come out of the oven, put it on a cooling rack because these have to get cooled pretty quickly because you are going to stack these things again with your almond or your apricot preserve jam that you separated earlier. Okay, so looking good, pretty consistent shapes. So like I said, here we go. We're gonna start stacking with our apricot jam. Now, be sure you're pretty good about separating these out. So as you stack them, there you go. Use your offset spatula, the best tool ever. And after you stack these things, what's important is you're gonna wanna top it with more wax paper and then weight it down with another baking sheet because what you don't want is for it not to have the same kind of flat surface across the board. And then it will go into the fridge for 8 hours at least. I actually left mine in overnight into like 36 hours and it works just fine.
So while those are chilling, let's maybe talk more about this story and tie in why we're talking about cookies and bakeries today. What does that have to do with crime?
It's loosely
based on crime. But anything about a bakery,
Yeah.
I'm all for.
Okay, so let's go back in time. It's 1989, the day after Thanksgiving. We're in Acme, Washington. Now, Acme is the type of town, probably like a lot of America, it's a small town. People are incredibly comfortable with each other. I mean, this is the type of neighborhood where people aren't locking their doors, they're leaving their keys in their cars.
Very
like they're
comfortable with each other.
Yeah, they're so trusting. Like, why would anyone ever do anything bad? You know, how could anyone do anything bad in this
Famous
neighborhood?
last words.
Yeah. So, day after Thanksgiving, this woman, Mandy Stavik, she is a college freshman. She's back home for Thanksgiving break, and she decides to go for a jog. Now, Mandy was someone that people described as incredibly athletic. She was very bright, pretty, just a very vivacious young woman. You know, everyone in the community was just very proud of her. So she goes jogging with the family dog, and then 2 hours later, the dog comes home, finds its way home, and
she's gone.
Mandy does not return home. So her mother,
boy.
Mary, alerts the media, what is happening. And originally, police think, okay, well, her boyfriend, let's look into that. She had an on-again, off-again relationship with this guy for 2 years. He apparently was incredibly forthcoming with his alibi, which checked out. So he
no longer a suspect.
Not a suspect. I mean, her body didn't show up until 3 days later. So of course, she wasn't alive. She was found 6 miles away from her home in the Nooksack River, pardon me. And just her shoes on. She was clearly sexually assaulted. The medical examiner concluded that she died of asphyxiation by drowning. And people were really surprised because, again, she was really athletic. So it's like, how could this woman
she could have swam her way out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, based on their investigation, it didn't look like there was any struggling that went on by the river. You know, they couldn't figure it out. But the medical examiner, I guess, took a closer look, and sure enough, she had an injury on the top of her head that looked, you know, she clearly there was a blow to her head, unconscious.
So she was barely alive probably when she was in the river, and then probably...
No, and what a terrible way to die.
Oh.
You're still technically alive and you drown in the water. Like, yuck. So this, you know, this crime really gripped this small community because, again, like, people are so trusting. Like, you would never think this could happen in your backyard, right? So here comes a woman. Her name is Kim Wagner. Now, Kim was 19 years old at the time that Mandy was killed, and she recalled that this really shook the community, and it was just, you couldn't believe that in your corner of the world this could happen. Now, remember Kim's name because she'll be a key player later on. So what happens is, that was 89, right?
Yeah.
So it had been years, like years, from 99 to 2013, there's a new guy who comes in. So a third detective gets put in charge of this case.
Right.
And he figured, okay, well, we haven't done this kind of systematic sweep of all of the men that lived in that area in 1989. So sure enough, they go door to door to every person they think they can find and pretty much ask, like, will you volunteer to give up like samples of your DNA so we can build a database to try to match what we found years ago. Right. So again, this happened from 99 to 2013 and no luck. Nothing happened after collecting all of this data. So, don't know how, but the police get a name thrown in. This guy, Timothy Bass. He apparently had lived on her street for years. And, you know, he was a young man too. So he might have been like an older gentleman in college. His younger brother, Tom, was friends with Mandy.
Okay, so he was clearly connected to her.
Yeah, and again, small community. Everybody knows everybody. Yeah. Apparently he was a little bit of an oddball, quiet guy.
Yeah.
So it's got, watch out. Yeah. But the police go to his home, and he now lives outside of Acme, because apparently after the murder, he got out of Dodge and moved, got married, you know, had 3 kids, and tried to just live
a normal life
until shit enough. Yeah. So the police ask him to volunteer his DNA, and he says no, he doesn't trust them. He doesn't believe that they're police officers, you know. And then they said, well, do you know who Mandy is? And he says, I don't know.
I don't know that name.
I mean, talk about like the sirens going off, like red flags. So, you know, very questionable. So police immediately are like, suspect number 1, like this guy, there's something wrong with him. So authorities show up at Tim's workplace, which happens to be this bakery factory outlet. So he's one of the drivers, and this woman, Kim Wagner, who I talked about earlier, she also happened to work here as well. So police show up, and they're not really direct, like, why they're there. They're clearly not pinpointing it that, like, oh, it's this guy,
it's this person, right?
No. So instead, what they do is they're going and they're asking around for, like, oh, you know, can we see the truck routes to try to, like, pinpoint, like, well, what trucks were you in, what trucks? Because what they wanted to do was to go into the truck and maybe pick up some cigarette butts or, you know, any of his trash that might have DNA on it. And you know, Kim's like, listen, that's like way above my pay grade. Like, leave me alone. So she directs them to HR, and they say, unless you have a subpoena or some kind of warrant,
can't do anything.
Sorry, you can't do anything. You gotta go. So that kind of just was that. It just sat there for a while, and then, and actually, before it gets good, maybe we should check on
the cookies. I totally forgot about the cookies because I'm so invested in the story right now.
All right,
we can't forget about the cookies.
It's time for Frost with Chocolate, which is kind of the best part.
Yes.
So we will be back and
leaving me on this cliffhanger.
Till next time.
Okay.
So once your 8 hours is up, you're going to take this out of the fridge, and in a double boiler, you're going to take 7 ounces of bittersweet chocolate and melt it. And here we go. You can do this all day. We're gonna spread it on your top layer, nice and even. You don't want it too thick of a coat. That's perfect. So here we go. It's all covered. And then back into the fridge it's going to go for about 15 to 30 minutes just so that it stiffens up. And then we'll be back with the other side.
So those are going to hang out in the fridge until...
For 15
minutes?
30 minutes until it basically has
Sets.
enough of a dry crust that we can flip it.
Okay, so back to the story.
So back to the story. So right, you need a warrant, you need a subpoena, you don't have one,
Yes.
get out. So a few years later, Kim is talking to her coworkers and it's revealed that this guy Tim lived in Acme. He lived on this particular street, and it goes off in Kim's head that, oh my gosh,
Yes.
that is
She's
where
connecting the dots.
that woman Mandy lived.
Yep.
And that is why the police were there asking her about DNA samples. So she was ready. So the next time the police came, she pretty much snuck them into her office and asked them point blank.
Yeah. Is this
Are
who
you
you're
investigating this guy for Mandy's murder? And the police were stunned that she put it all together. But the thing about it was, Kim had asked the police, do you want me to collect DNA for you?
Yeah.
And they told her, well, you know what? Police can't technically have a civilian collect evidence for us. However, if you were to just do it on your own and bring it to us, we can't rule that out.
Yeah.
Semantics.
Like, ding, ding.
So she said,
Yeah.
I volunteer.
Yep.
So she creepily, follows this guy around. She's, checking like for his garbage and realizes that he's bringing all of his garbage home with him.
Well, again,
Like
red
weirdo.
flag. That's another suspicious thing to do.
Yeah, and I mean, like, again, it had been a few years, since the police stopped by. So, so he's been doing this for years.
Yeah, so clearly he knows that he's got to be careful. He's got to watch his back.
Yeah, and just as a side story, as I said, he was a weirdo.
Oh, yeah.
So his wife explained that he, like us, would watch a lot of true crime, and he would read a lot of things, and he always mocked the murderer, whoever was perpetrating the crime, saying, I would never get caught. Like, that's so stupid.
Oh, please.
Well, so there you are.
Yeah.
No trash. But apparently the sweet new thing at work was they brought in a water bubbler, like a cooler.
Right.
And he was there. So Kim, sneaks up by him and realizes he throws a cup away. So she, drives for the waste paper basket, drives down to the police station, gives them the cup, and sure enough,
He's
the
a
DNA
match.
matches.
Oh my gosh.
So he was arrested. Now
Good.
this is in 2017. This murder happened in 1989. I mean,
Yeah. So we're talking...
Mandy's family has been waiting for justice for a long time.
Yeah, what, 30 years?
And we're not police officers, but come on, police.
Yeah.
Like, the man lived on her street, and he suddenly moved. You don't think to look at things like that, but whatever. So that happens. He is arrested. And now he's up for trial, and he begs his wife to make up an alibi for him, and as she does, she says, oh yeah, we were together that day.
Yeah.
Lies. She later says, nope, that wasn't true. He asks his brother Tom, who again was friendly with Mandy, they were friends in high school, asks, can you say that you had sex with her that day, and that's why she happened to have our DNA on her?
And then hit her head and then fell into
No.
a river. Okay,
Yeah,
sure.
no. And then, as an even further reach, he says, well, before she went away to college, we started this sexual relationship, She came back, she came to visit me.
Yeah, no.
Her sister took the stand and said, absolutely not.
Yeah.
You are a weirdo, and she is out of your league. That never would have happened.
Yeah, in your dreams,
yeah.
buddy.
Her family didn't believe it, the police didn't believe it, the jury didn't believe it. He was sentenced to 320 months, roughly 27 years, for first-degree murder. He was guilty. And apparently that justice was served. I mean,
Yeah.
I still can't believe it was only
It only
27 years.
That long to catch him.
I mean, it took him, he lived longer than the
Basically,
sentence
a life.
of his life.
Yeah. Yep.
Than his actual sentence. To me, that seems somewhat unfair. It's like you need to do the 27 years plus the back time that you lived
that you were
as a
living
free
freely.
man.
Yep. Pay it back, buddy.
Yeah, a little vindictive, but that's why I'm not a judge. So, but that's it. You know, all because of this one woman. And you know, again, we had a little bit of stretch, this bakery worker, but you know, the stars aligned and things just went off in her head and she knew and felt so emboldened to do it. And again, she was 19 years old, Mandy was 18.
So she felt sort of
like it could have happened
like
to anyone.
related to that.
And I think that, it really hit home for her.
Yeah.
It could have been anyone. And I'm pretty sure she said, when she was older, it's like, I have a daughter that's around that age. So it's like,
God forbid anything were to happen.
Yeah, it's like
to
I
her.
can't sit back and do nothing if I can really do it. And thank God for her because she pretty much cracked the case.
Wow.
So cheers to you, Kim. I'm sure Mandy's family thanks you.
Well, I was gonna say, I'm sure after all of those years, her family is probably like, oh, finally at peace with it. So
exactly. So now we shall continue on with our cookies.
With our baking, I know.
Like
After that crazy story, I need to eat my feelings.
Yeah, we can't just drink our feelings. We need to eat them.
We need to eat them
we will be back.
Right back.
Okay, so our 15 minutes is up, and what I did was I was able to flip my cookies using a baking sheet on the other side to invert my whole cookie. So now we're on the green side, and I did the same exact thing. I took 7 ounces of the bittersweet chocolate, I melted it in a double boiler, and here I go again, just spreading it across the top, and back in the fridge it goes for 30 more minutes at least before we cut this baby.
So once the cookies have totally chilled and you've cut them, you can arrange them beautifully on this plate, like so. And I'm just gonna come up close because I think you need a closer look at this delicacy.
Yep.
So,
Come close.
if you take a look, you can see how amazing these layers are, and you can even see the beautiful layer of the apricot jam in between each of the cake layers. And the colors, I think, are what really distinguish this cookie from all of the other cookies in that sort of drab cookie tray that you would get at a function. So now the best part of all is the tasting of the cookie. Now I remember when I was little, I would actually separate them layer by layer and eat each layer, but now the more mature way that I've started doing it now is just taking it all in one bite. So, cheers. Mmm. Yep. I mean,
Tastes exactly like that.
like even when you bite down, you can hear that little crack from the chocolate. The layers are nicely condensed together.
Has that almond taste.
Almond taste with a little sweetness of the apricot. I'm gonna go excellent with a glass of wine.
You sure do.
So, here's to your Friday. Enjoy these
Treats.
treats, these little colorful
Italian
treasures.
gems.
Invite some friends over. Finish a platter off by yourself. We won't judge you. And enjoy a glass of wine.
Yep. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks
and don't
for joining
forget,
us.
subscribe, follow us on every and any social media that you can think of.
Yep.
We are there. And yeah, give us a follow.
Till next time. Cheers.
Caviar and Cadavers.
We're sisters. Twins. We got twins a lot. Okay, great.
We love to cook. Oh, and we love murder mysteries.
It's murder then. Then murder it is.